What are the most badass, give them the middle finger moments in history? Story 1. Mine would be what Genghis Khan did to Shah al-Din. The Khwarezmids had the guts to raid one of Genghis Khan's caravans, not just stealing his stuff but also tragically leading to the loss of lives among his group. In a move that could be seen as diplomatic, Genghis Khan decided to send not one, but 2 envoys along with an interpreter to sort things out. But here's where it went sideways. Shah al-Din decided to be a complete idiot about it. He humiliated Genghis Khan's envoys by shaving their heads and sending them back with the interpreter's head. Now Mr. Khan, understandably, was pretty darn furious, so he gathered an army of 200,000 of his finest warriors and utterly decimated their town. And get this, only a quarter of that massive force was even capable of putting up a fight. He was so enraged with Shah al-Din that he had the rivers, the very lifelines of the surrounding villages, fully diverted. He wanted to erase al-Din's birthplace from the map, making it as if it never existed. "No one, not even animals," Genghis Khan declared, would be spared in this ruthless erasure. You can still visit the ruins of the once mighty cities of the Khwarezmid Empire today. They are vast, a civilization that Genghis Khan turned into a desolate wasteland just because they disrespected him. Not once, but twice. For robbing his caravan and mistreating his diplomats. They didn't have a 3-strike rule back then, that's for sure. Genghis Khan's motto seemed to be, shame me once and I'll try to be civil with you. Shame me twice and I'll wipe your birthplace off the map. Here's another fascinating Genghis Khan revenge story. When his wife was kidnapped by a rival tribe and about to be sold as a slave to spite him, he flew into a rage. He rode out with his men, fought a war, and got her back. But that wasn't enough. The entire tribe was annihilated and there was no record of their culture left in history. The Wikipedia page probably ends with, Genghis Khan arrived at their camp, because there was really nothing left afterward. And here's an interesting twist to the story. Genghis Khan's wife later gave birth to a son. The timing was such that no one could tell if the child was conceived shortly before her kidnapping or after, which meant no one could determine paternity. It remains a mystery to this day whether the child was Genghis Khan's or one of the kids. Considering what they did to his wife, Khan never knew if the boy was his biological son, yet he raised him as if he were. It's strangely wholesome for a warlord, isn't it? Now about insulting Genghis Khan, it really mattered on the nature of the offense. One of Genghis Khan's best strengths was his ability to listen to people. He recognized skill and valued it above all else. So you could probably argue with him about diplomacy matters if you were an envoy or tell him to cut back on the drinking if you were his physician. Just don't say anything bad about his mom. Another fun fact, after an enemy warrior took down Genghis Khan's horse, he promoted the guy to be general in his own army. That dude went on to become one of the finest military commanders of all time. You see, Genghis Khan wasn't just incredibly talented himself, he recognized and recruited people who could easily make a top 20 list of the best military leaders in history. That's why nobody in Europe could compete with him. While Europeans were handing command of armies exclusively to the highborn, who often turned out to be idiots, Genghis Khan was promoted based on merit. It's one of the many reasons he became a legendary conqueror. Khan's army was like a mobile on horseback. His principles on power were simple. If you see a threat, make it an ally or your hometown could become the barbecue capital of the steppe. Story 2. My personal favorite is the beginning of the Battle of Stamford Bridge in England in the year 1066. England had been invaded by a Norwegian army led by Harald Hardrada, the King of Norway, and Tostig Godwinson, an exiled English earl and estranged brother of the English king. They'd already fought one battle and captured York. Things were looking good for them. They were chilling, enjoying their success, waiting at Stamford Bridge for the hostage they demanded. It was a hot day. They weren't expecting any trouble. But then an English army showed up. That was practically impossible. The Battle of Fulford Gate had happened just 5 days ago, and the Norwegians had completely routed the forces of the northern earls. The rest of the English army was supposed to be in the south, awaiting a Norman invasion. Turns out the English had ridden all the way up north in just 4 days. Norwegians were understandably unhappy. They formed a circle. They didn't have their armor with them. Everything was at the ship since it was too hot to be hanging around in chainmail. They had helmets, shields, and weaponry, and that was it. The English sent a rider to negotiate. He told Tostig that his brother, the king, was willing to offer him earldom back and part of the rule of England if he gave up now. Tostig asked what his buddy Harald Hardrada would get for his trouble. 6 feet of English ground or as much more as he needs, being taller than other men. It was basically a very personal screw-you moment that snowballed intensely. Tostig said they were done here. The rider rode away. Harald Hardrada asked who that dude was because if it had been him talking, he'd have just wiped out the bastard there. Tostig said, "Oh, that's my brother. That's Harald Godwinson, the king." Battle commenced. The Norwegians lost. Tostig and Harald Hardrada both died. It was a huge bloody mess. The English army was crippled, and then 3 days later, the Normans landed in the south. Harold was in deep trouble. He still marched his army back, gathered as much force as he could, and engaged 3 weeks later. He perished at Hastings. The Normans conquered England. And for those wondering, yes, this was the battle with a legendary berserker at the bridge, but in reality, it probably didn't actually happen. The story appears hundreds of years later and needs to be more consistent. Also, there might not have been a bridge there at the time. It's one of those butterfly moments in history where if the timing of things were slightly different or if the English faced the invaders in a different order, William the Bastard might be a footnote in history. We'd all be communicating in a language full of Norwegian words instead of French ones. Psst, guess what? This video is sponsored by none other than me and my awesome crew at Rufus Rugs. We're the masters of creating custom, hand-tufted rugs that truly capture who you are. Whether you're looking to turn one of our intriguing thumbnails into a rug, for purely academic reasons, of course, or you're eager to transform your room with some epic anime-inspired designs, we can get it done for you. These are all handmade by me and the team from Canada. No dropshipping BS here. Real, handmade custom rugs by me and my friends. Click the first link in the description to learn more. Story 3. The Battle of Alesia. Julius Caesar, that Roman dude, was facing off against some Gauls in what we now call France. The Gauls, probably realizing they couldn't take on Caesar's army head-on, decide to hightail it into a castle perched on top of a hill. Smart move, right? Well, Caesar's army isn't exactly a small group, but it's not big enough to storm that castle, especially since the Gauls had reinforcements en route. Siege? Nope, not an option. So what does Caesar do? He pulls a genius move. He decides to build a bigger castle around the one he's attacking. Yeah, you read that right. He basically creates a castleception. 2 walls, one inside the other, encircling the Gauls. The first Gaul army was already outmatched by Caesar, and now, with these new fortifications, he's got an even bigger advantage. As for the reinforcements, they were stuck outside, unable to coordinate with their comrades inside the castle. Chaos, right? Both Gallic armies made futile attempts to reach Caesar's newly constructed fortifications, complete with spike pits, earthworks, and wooden walls. Guess who won? You got it. Caesar emerged victorious from this epic showdown. Seriously, it's probably my favorite battle of all time. I mean, let's talk about the logistics for a second. The Romans had to build over 20 miles of walls. That's no small feat, and they did it in record time, like lightning speed. I still can't wrap my head around how you build something that massive so darn fast. Well, I guess having a whole army working on it helps. Roman warfare, it's incredibly fascinating. That colossal building, digging, walking, and fighting machine just seems unreal to me. It's almost like, Julius Caesar, can we build it? Caesar troops, yes, we can! Dude, that's the kind of dedication I need to do the forbidden. Can I touch grass? Yes, I can. Story 4. Ferruccio Lamborghini, a wealthy man who owned his own tractor company, found himself in an unexpected rivalry with Ferrari. It all began when he approached Ferrari with some suggestions to improve their cars, but they dismissed him, viewing him as a mere tractor mechanic. In response to Ferrari's arrogance, Lamborghini decided to enter the world of luxury sports cars and compete directly with them. This decision marked the beginning of a fierce rivalry that would take the attention of car enthusiasts worldwide. Now, when Ford was on the verge of purchasing Ferrari, they discovered a clause in the paperwork that stipulated Ferrari would retain ownership of their racing team. This revelation left Ford frustrated and disappointed. Enzo Ferrari, the founder of Ferrari, essentially implied that Ford wasn't worthy of owning such a prestigious racing team. However, Ford wasn't one to back down from a challenge. They enlisted the expertise of Shelby Carroll, and under his guidance, Ford managed to defeat Ferrari at the legendary Le Mans race. This victory marked the beginning of Ford's dominance at Le Mans, a feat they continued to achieve every time they entered the competition. In the grand scheme of things, it's safe to say that Ferruccio Lamborghini's decision to challenge Ferrari and Ford's determination to defeat them at Le Mans sent a powerful message. It was a symbolic middle finger to Ferrari, proving that in the world of high-performance cars, anyone could rise to the occasion and become a formidable competitor. Story 5. Operation Paul Bunyan, a story from 1976 at the Korean Demilitarized Zone. Some American soldiers near the DMZ decide to cut down a tree that's blocking their view into North Korea. Seems harmless, right? Wrong. A couple of North Korean soldiers showed up, and believe it or not, they brought down a few Americans right on the spot. What happens next is like a plot from an action movie on steroids. The Americans and South Koreans responded with an absolutely massive show of force. We're talking jet planes, 27 helicopters, even a full aircraft carrier moved off the coast. Thousands of troops, troop carriers, commandos, all mobilized just to send in a squad of army engineers armed with chainsaws to take down that darn tree. Seriously. Check out the forces used section in the Wikipedia article. It's a mix of riveting and hilarious. And here's the kicker. One of the generals involved had the tree carved into a swagger stick as a souvenir. They made sure to leave a 6-meter-high stump so you never forget that they removed that tree. Talk about determination, right? But that's not all. Some of the first South Korean soldiers to dismount during this operation had claymore mines strapped to their chests, and were basically challenging the North Korean soldiers nearby like, come on, give it your best shot. The sheer bravery of those men is astounding. It's like they were saying, come and have a go if you think you're tough enough. Man, even the little I know about the South Korean military makes them seem pretty terrifying. I've heard stories about South Korean soldiers being ambushed in the dark, fighting bare hand to avoid friendly fire, and being able to distinguish South Koreans from North Koreans by touch. Countries that live in a perpetual state of war tend to have soldiers as tough as nails. Yeah, it seems impressive until you Google South Korean stint in Vietnam. There are two sides to every coin, am I right? If you like these stories about people in history, then give this one a like and subscribe to my channel. Story 6. In AD 37, the Roman Emperor Gaius, better known as Caligula, undertook a remarkable project. A bridge that spanned 3 miles across the azure waters of the Bay of Naples in the fashionable resort town of Baiae. This was no ordinary bridge. It stood as a temporary floating marvel constructed on wooden pontoons, a testament to both engineering prowess and extravagance. Its purpose, however, was singular. It was meant to serve as a fleeting spectacle before its deconstruction. On a scorching day beneath the watchful eyes of countless spectators, Caligula traveled the bridge. His gilded armor shimmered in the sunlight as the 24-year-old emperor donned the golden breastplate that once adorned the legendary Greek hero Alexander the Great. The next day, Caligula repeated the journey, this time riding in a chariot, accompanied by his personal guard. To many in the crowd, this extravagant display seemed pointless, lost amidst the revelry that had filled the preceding days. Some unfortunate spectators even met a watery demise, having indulged themselves a bit too much. According to one historian, Caligula's motive for this grand spectacle was to debunk a prophecy that claimed he had as much chance of becoming emperor as riding a horse across the Bay of Baiae. His bold threat to make his horse a consul, while seemingly mad, was more a calculated insult to the Senate. It carried the message of either, "My horse could govern better than any of you," or "I can make my horse consul and you can't stop me." Caligula's reign, marked by such extravagant displays and audacious acts, remain a bizarre chapter in Roman history. Story 7. Olga of Kiev. When her husband passed away, the country responsible for his death probably thought they could just swoop in, take over, and pressure her into marriage. Big mistake. Olga wasn't having any of it. She didn't just say no, she delivered a resounding message. She straight up took down the dignitaries they sent to deliver the unwanted proposal, not once but multiple times, and in the most intense way you can imagine. But she didn't stop there. Olga went to a journey to the place where her husband had met his fate and unleashed her fury, reducing it to ashes in the most hardcore way. Her incredible actions didn't go unnoticed. They even honored her with sainthood for her fearless defiance and legendary revenge. You've got to check out her full story in Wikipedia. It's worth every minute of your time. Story 8. Stop sending people to end me. We've already nabbed 5 of them, one with a and another one packing a rifle. If you don't cut it out with these hitmen, I'll dispatch a real speedy one straight to Moscow, and trust me, I won't need to send another, said Tito to Joseph Stalin. Well, if they ever make a dark comedy TV series about the Eastern Bloc, this would definitely be a standout moment. This quote captures the tension of that time. Tito, the Yugoslav leader, was clearly frustrated with Stalin's attempts to eliminate him through assassins. He's sending a clear message that if the hitmen don't stop coming, he'll retaliate swiftly and decisively. Anyway, have you seen The Death of Stalin? It's such a fantastic movie, with so many incredible actors with some seriously awesome dialogue. Anyway, Tito's got that major energy. Tito was a savage. But let's be real, if the USSR had invaded, Yugoslavia would have folded like a lawn chair. Still, gotta hand it to Tito. The man's got some serious cojones. Story 9. Let's talk about the warwolf. A trebuchet so massive that when disassembled, it required 30 wagons just to haul it away. Now, King Edward I had this colossal contraption constructed for one purpose, to lay siege to a Scottish castle. But even before it was fully assembled, the Scots decided, hey, maybe we should surrender? And what was Edward's response? Well, instead of a polite acceptance, he promptly shot them down, figuratively and quite literally, well, with a trebuchet. His exact words, "You do not deserve any grace but must surrender to my will." Translation, I spent 40 long days building this epic trebuchet and I'm darn well going to use it. In his own words, it's like he said, I went through all the trouble of crafting this epic trebuchet and now you can bet your bottom dollar I'm going to put it to the test. You had the chance to surrender when I asked nicely, even a week later, but after 40 days, there are no take-backsies. Time to feast on my trebuchet, noobs. But it was ruthless still. Story 10. When France decided to exile Napoleon Bonaparte for the first time, they made a rather critical oversight. They left the military personnel unchanged. So Napoleon, with his swagger and ambition, rolled up to the first French outpost he encountered and casually said, "Hey there," as if he had just gone on a short vacation. Little did they know he had grander plans in mind, rebuilding his army. As he marched towards Paris, he wasn't alone. By the time he reached the heart of France, he had amassed enough forces to make even France think twice about their decision to exile him. Legend has it that upon encountering the first group of soldiers on his return, he boldly declared, "Any of you who dare oppose the emperor, fire." To everyone's surprise, the soldiers cheered and rallied to his side. Napoleon's legacy was a mixed bag. We've heard stories of his occupation of France and the resulting deaths, but in the end, he is celebrated as a great emperor and leader. Yeah, it was all fun and games until the Prussians showed up, leaving Napoleon with a fat L at Waterloo. Story 11. When the minister-president of Prussia, Otto von Bismarck, was around 50 years old, a man suddenly approached him with a sinister intent and fired 5 shots in rapid succession at close range. In a twist that could only be described as extraordinary, Otto didn't crumple under the attack. Instead, he restrained his assailant until some armed guards rushed to his aid. The guards carefully examined Otto for injuries. To their amazement, they discovered that all 5 shots had indeed found their mark. However, Otto's luck proved to be extraordinary. The bullets had either just grazed him or bounced off. It was a scene that left everyone astounded, earning Otto the moniker the Iron Chancellor in the most literal sense. Story 12. Back in the 1970s, the little town of Vulcan, West Virginia found itself in a tight spot. They needed a new bridge, and like any town in need, they turned to the state for funding. But guess what? The state turned them down flat. And most towns might have just accepted defeat, but not Vulcan. Oh no, they had a plan. They decided to give the good old Soviet Union a shout-out, asking for their help instead. Yep, you read that right. In the middle of the Cold War, they reached out to the other side. The state legislature, upon hearing this unexpected move, must have had a collective facepalm moment. Suddenly, they magically found over $1 million in their pockets and granted it to Vulcan for a shiny new bridge. It was pure comedy. I can imagine the government saying, "We won't fund your bridge." And the city council calmly responded with, "Well then, have you seen my hammer and sickle? If that's not a giant middle finger to the state government, I don't know what is." What's even funnier is that 2 Soviet representatives at the US Embassy actually took the time to come and inspect the broken bridge, seriously considering funding its reconstruction just to ruffle some American feathers. Can you imagine the amount of propaganda the Soviets could have had with that? It was really a slick move by Vulcan, playing the game and winning no matter who footed the bill. You've got to hand it to whoever came up with this in the town council. They deserve some kind of medal or honor for their ingenious play. Those city council members were speedrunners when it came to making deals. It would have been a plot twist for the ages if the USSR had gotten involved back then. Story 13. This story comes with a bit of background. The Spartans were known for their straightforward and concise way of speaking. They were trained to be straightforward and to the point, even if it meant being physically reprimanded for verbosity. Philip II of Macedon, who was the father of Alexander the Great, sent a letter to the Spartans, asking them whether he should approach their land as a friend or a foe. In true Spartan fashion, they replied with just one word: neither. This response left Philip quite furious, prompting him to send another lengthy message threatening to destroy them entirely once he entered their territories. Yet the Spartans, undeterred, responded with another single word: if. It was a bold move, similar to sticking your head into a lion's den, and I find it utterly fascinating. By the way, the term laconic originates from this very region, as Laconia is essentially another name for Sparta, and its people were known as Lacedaemons. Story 14. The Achaemenid Empire faced significant challenges when attempting to conquer Egypt during the early stages of their war campaign. To overcome this obstacle, they devised a rather unusual strategy by harnessing the power of the Egyptians' deeply held religious beliefs. They literally had their soldiers carry cats with them into battle and even went so far as to paint cat heads on their shields. This ingenious tactic left the Egyptians in a confusing situation, as they couldn't bring themselves to fight against these sacred creatures, which they held in high regard due to their beliefs. Eventually, faced with this unorthodox and unexpected approach, the Egyptians had no choice but to surrender. In a way, it was as if the Achaemenid Empire had pulled off a remarkable maneuver, turning the Egyptian god into their frontline defense. This clever feat in history is famously known as the Battle of Pelusium. Story 15. I'm a French Quarter tour guide and I tell this story every day. It's about a pirate named Jean Lafitte, and he had a $500 bounty placed on him by a governor. So what did Jean do? He turned the tables and put a $5,000 bounty on the governor. It's like a game of know you. But Jean Lafitte's ultimate screw you moment isn't even this one. He got a proposition from the British, something like, "Hey, help us navigate the swamps around New Orleans so we can sneak attack the place. In return, the king will pardon you and make you a privateer." Jean's response? "Give me a fortnight to think about it." Instead, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He sneaked over to the governor's mansion, scaled the outside wall like a true swashbuckler, and waited for him in his office. There, he spilled the beans to the governor and Andrew Jackson, revealing the British plan and their offer. He made it crystal clear that he wouldn't betray New Orleans because he loved the city. All he asked for was a pardon in exchange for everything they needed to win the war. And he delivered. Jean Lafitte also played a big role alongside Andrew Jackson in the Battle of New Orleans, fighting against the British. To sum it up, F the British, eh? That's some next-level pirate stuff right there. Lafitte was the OG Pirate King, and he played that reverse card like a boss. If you like this video, you're gonna love immigrants. What are your culture shock stories? Story 4 had me on the edge of my seat. Don't miss it.